Village. Sarah Palermo, she's the gatekeeper for any Zoom activity, which most of it is Ed Marin, our building inspector. Doug Hahn, the consultant to the village as an engineer, and Mary Ann Stessage, the village attorney. Bill McGillicuddy,
Also
known as Dan. I'm Caesar Manfredi, the chairman. This is Mike Smith. I left it Mike. All right, the first order of business would be the minutes. Sarah, we okay with the minutes, everybody?
Yes.
Signed off. Okay, I make a motion to approve the minutes of July 5th, 2023. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Okay, the order of March, for lack of anything else. Number one would be Forest Circle Drive. Number two is 57 Hillside Terrace. Number three is 33 Osceola Avenue. Number four is 18 Hillside Terrace. Number five is 202 West Clinton Avenue. Number six is 34 Lewis Road Park. And number seven is 123 Main Street. While on the agenda, number 2023-23, 30 South Ferris Street. That is on the agenda, but it will not be heard tonight. There were some issues with the application. So if you were interested in that, it's not on. Number one, 2023-17, Forest Circle Drive.
If you're here to represent the applicant, if you can please hit the raise hand button. Christine Broda, is she on? There is nobody raising the hand. She's not on right now.
We'll come back to it. You sure? Okay, number one is not on, so we'll come back to it when Sarah recognizes a representative. So we'll go to number two, 2023-09, 57 Hillside Terrace.
Good evening. This is Shaheen Badali representing the applicant at 57 Hillside Terrace. My address is 2 Wilson Place, Mount Vernon, New York, 10550.
Okay.
So we have before you the resubmission of the application for 57 Hillside Terrace. If I may, I will share my screen. We have received these comments from the engineering department, and I would like to respectfully just and briefly go through them. The first point is that we are requesting, or that we would need.
Excuse me. We're more interested in the site plan. The engineering stuff will straighten it out.
Thank you. So the further site plan revisions that we will be making, the part of the comments that were issued is that the water pond or garden, as it's labeled on our drawings, is too high. We will be proposing to reduce the total height of the water pond in order to meet the requirements that it is not a pool. So I do want to make the board aware of that revision that will be forthcoming.
Hold on one second.
Also,
Oh, yes, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. I wanted to make sure the building department agreed with that.
Yeah, they have to lower the cap. They just can't lower the water level.
Okay.
They have to lower the cap. So the volume and the depth is less than our code.
Okay, so it's not a pool. Go ahead.
correct, thank you. So that's our intent, is to lower it to I believe it's less than 16 inches, but we will confirm that with the zoning and the building department to make sure it's accurate. I just pulled up here as well the proposed landscaping plan that was developed by a landscape architect. It was included in the original submission. Unfortunately, it didn't make it into our most recent submission. It's a plan that we're going to be adding into our drawings. Also, in response to one of the engineering comments that was recently issued. We're hoping that with those revisions that the site plans could be complete at that time. If the
At the last meeting, we recognized that the arborist report that was available last meeting was acceptable, and I think I even commented that we thank you for that. Our landscape architect was very satisfied with the arborist report that we had as of last meeting. So, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And so with that, we're seeking to make these revisions to the site plan to lower the pond depth, to include this entire landscaping plan into our drawing set as well, and to make a resubmission in order to hopefully get a referral to the zoning board to seek a lot coverage variance. I can go through any other changes that were made. Otherwise, I would seek any further comment from the board if there is any.
Well, you have a need for a variance, and from our understanding, the need for the variance is not so much any structure. It's all the walls that were necessary for the terracing. So the walls provide a purpose to prevent flooding and runoff. So we don't have too much of a problem with the variance, and you may want to use that when you go to the ZBA, that the coverage is relates to the walls to prevent flooding. So in order to not need a variance for coverage, you wind up with a water problem. So you keep that in mind.
I appreciate the recommendation.
Any comments from the board here?
No comments, Caesar.
Mike?
Well,
Smith.
yes, can you show us the comparison chart on coverage?
I believe here it is displayed now. Are you able to see it?
Perhaps you want to enlarge it and show
Where
us
you are.
where you are in this.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. This table displays most of the properties that are adjacent to us on Gray Rock Terrace and Hillside Terrace, and 3 properties on Meadow Way. The 2 last values on the chart are our values. So the existing coverage, total percentage, is 21.9% on our proposed lot, which is a 25.8, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if this is reading correctly here. Let me just. Excuse me while I just pull this up. So in comparison to the lots that are adjacent to us, we have a 25.8% total coverage proposed, whereas the large majority of the lots are either roughly the same amount or above. We do have lots located at 10 Gray Rock Terrace, as well as 24 Hillside Terrace and 27 Hillside Terrace, as well as 5 Riverview Terrace, which are all above the asking amount that we are currently proposing.
So Doug, since he's using some other form of comparison. So do you understand what his comparison is? Because your notes are it's 45.5% over allowable and 39.8% greater than existing. So you know what he's referring to as 20?
You're using he's
He's
using the
talking
total.
about total.
He's on total lot coverage, and he's using the Greenberg GIS,
But-
which the numbers will vary a little bit.
But in any event,
It's apples to apples.
whether you use that or you use this, he's still, I think it was about
Right.
4th.
So everything in his chart is
It's apples
is
to
apples to apples.
apples to apples.
Right,
Right.
okay. All right. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you.
Michael Fuco.
Sure, just one question for Ed first. Are we done with the wall structures?
We have a letter from the engineer, and we just have a few little things to tweak out.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Because if the lot coverage is based on the walls and the walls have to change.
Yeah.
And then went to the zoning board to get approval.
Yeah,
Then
no,
we have to go back.
the engineer has certified most of the walls.
Okay.
We have a few questions on the one to the south along the property line. We'll work on those.
Okay, good. All right, something else.
The question is structural stability, which is.
Right, so
The engineering
there
is gonna take
there
care
needed
of
to
it.
be. If any work needed to be done,
I was
and
our-
coverage changed, and then it would be,
Okay.
okay, now we gotta go for a variance again, because, but as long as there's no risk of that, I think.
Okay.
We're fine.
Thank you. Sarah, anything
I-
from the public? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just to harbor on that point, I just wanted to make the board aware that we did perform both geotechnicals, slope stability and structural calculations on the walls. I do understand that they're an unconventional method. We also did get the applicant to open up various areas around the property in order for us to verify that the installation was completed. And I just want to make the board aware of that.
Yeah, I think, did we just know that there's an ongoing conversation, and I wanted to make sure that.
He's
you
already
wasting time.
provided those documents to us.
Right.
Thank you.
Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Mary Ann, you have a resolution?
Whereas in March 2023, Barbara Chamika Yamonianis applied for site development plan approval to legalize terrace walls, planters, and additional structures associated with landscaping her property at 57 Hillside Terrace. And whereas the proposed construction exceeds permitted coverage and therefore requires a variance from the zoning board of appeals. Whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in memoranda dated February 27th, May 1st, and June 30th, made a number of comments, most of which were addressed in subsequent submissions. Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and made several comments and recommendations which were addressed to her satisfaction. Planning board held a public hearing on the application on March 1st, July 5th, and August 2nd, 2023. It's type 2 action under secret and therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Site Alterations 57 Hillside Terrace prepared by Badali Engineering, and then the sheets are itemized, subject to 1, receiving a variance for coverage from the ZBA, and 2, complying with Han's July 31st, 2023 memorandum.
Any questions on the resolution? No questions. Make a motion to approve the resolution as delivered.
Approved.
No, second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. Okay, we're done. Thank you very much. This
Thank you for your
particular
time.
took quite a time. It was all over the place in the beginning, and thank you for straightening it out and getting it to the point where we could approve it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sarah, did
Yeah.
Circle Drive come back?
Yes.
Okay, we're circling back to 4 Circle Drive, 2023-17.
Good evening, everyone. This is Chris Broda, the architect. Pardon my froggy voice, I'm losing it. We're back after we had gone to the zoning board and we got our approval for the 33 square feet plus change of extra coverage that we had. Do you need a refresher on what the project's about, or are you?
Why don't you just bring up the site plan and go over briefly?
Sure.
In case there was somebody not here for the first go around.
Okay. Here you can see the 3D overhead view. Let me get you the site plan. Can you? Here we go. Can you see the site plan now?
We see your graphics. Now we see the site. plan.
Yes.
Actually, the
Okay.
graphics, that's the only reason we made you come back, so we can see the graphics again.
It is fun to see it. It's fun to work with it. So The previous board objections were about, we needed some additional plantings, which I have here on the planting plan here. But just to recap, the previous owners had gotten a previous approval in 2016 for the addition to the house. They made some changes to the project which were not reflected in the plans that were approved, and we're trying to clean up that aggressive behavior. We're going to not quite do it the way we had done it previously in the previous submission. The approved plan, the driveway was straight here, and what ended up happening was they built and expanded the driveway in these two directions, making two curb cuts. They also added a small retaining wall here and another small retaining wall here. This retaining wall ended up getting longer and needing to go a bit longer as well. And so in our proposed work, we're going to take this extra section here of the driveway and remove it so that we have only one entrance. We've reduced the impervious surface coverage. And we're adding a fence around the back of the property so they can have the kids and the dog play out there. And I've added some more landscaping along here with our schedule here of a little bit more shrubbery. I want to put some low shrubs here along the driveway, added a few trees because there was a large linden tree that had been taken out where the driveway is now. The previous comments were about this other tree that was here, which is right here on the plan. That was actually in the right of way of the village, and the village did take it down because it was pretty in bad shape. So that's not something my clients took down. So what we're doing is doing some screening. We want to make sure that for everybody along the road that there's some screening here with some planting beds, some placed trees, another tree here that we're going to plant. These three existing trees were originally proposed to be removed. We're going to leave them there. They've not been removed. This is also a existing tree, as is this one. We'll put another tree here to help screen a bit. And I think a decorative tree along the facade with shrubbery would make a nice addition to it. So you can see it here. It gives us, let's see, a little bit better view of it here. So we get a little bit of tree hiding kind of this little corner here. Nice planting beds along the foundation. And then if you're on Circle Drive here, you could see that we'll have some nice shrubbery here to block the garages, the garage doors. And we still keeping this curve. I'll probably curve this a little bit just to make that a little bit easier to turn in this direction. Forgot to put that on the plan, but that's a minor thing that we'll do is curve that around. And then a couple of additional trees added. Just this over here. And there's a tree back there. And that's pretty much what we're doing. Some decorative planting, a lot of grass. And there we are. So, any comments or questions?
It's a small point, but people have come back for smaller points. If he changes that curb line on the south,
No big deal.
no big deal. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to curve it as opposed to having that sharp point. Just give
Well,
it a
sometimes
little bit of a
if one-
radius.
sometimes when one makes a change from what was approved, one has to come back for the
Yes.
approval of. That
Understood.
doesn't.
It's pretty small.
I wanted to make sure that was small enough to be avoided. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dan,
I have no comments. It looks good, the project.
Mike,
No questions.
Mike Bafuco.
Nothing for me.
Anything, Sarah, from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay. We have a resolution.
Whereas in June 2023, Joshua Lechner applied for site development plan approval to modify a previously approved site development plan, specifically to construct a driveway, legalize existing retaining walls, and install fencing and landscaping on his property at Four Circle Drive. And whereas the proposed construction exceeds permitted coverage, requiring a coverage variance from the zoning board of appeals, which was granted on June 27th. Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated June 5th, made a number of comments which were addressed in a subsequent submission. Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and made several comments which were addressed to her satisfaction. The Planning board held a public hearing on the application on June 7th and August 2nd. Type 2 action under secret and therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Lechner Residence prepared by Christine Broda, architect. Sheets are designated. No conditions.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Make a motion to approve the resolution as read.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. And the graphics are just outstanding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for the approval. Good night.
Good night. Number 3 coming up is 2022-36. That would be 33 Osceola Avenue.
Good evening. Let me know when you guys can see me. I will share my screen.
We can see you, but we don't see the site plan yet.
Okay, I'm pulling it up now. Okay, so if you, let me just blow this up a little. You recall, this is, take a step back, 33 Osceola Avenue. Application to legalize an existing concrete pool patio at the existing residence. Matthew Behrens, the architect who represents the applicant, Rishi Sawhney. If you recall, we last presented this in March. The board recommended deferral to the zoning board. We presented to the zoning board of appeals in April and again in May. The results of that were that they had requested that we make further reductions in the existing patio, which are illustrated here. We've kind of, you can see where this shaded area is. We went from about 174 square feet reduction from that March meeting to the planning board. And we are now up to 280 square feet of reduction. So over 100 square feet from when the application was last presented. This is what the zoning board eventually approved at the May meeting. At this point, we've kind of removed as much as we can. The reason why it kind of looks like there's a little bit of a belly here is because there's a diving board on this side. And part of the conversations with the zoning board included, you know, the ability to walk around this side of the pool, because this side of the pool, you really can't walk around. It's all gravel. Plus it's pretty tight up against that fence. So this is the main egress path to get around the pool, and also to provide enough of a paved area around the diving board for, you know, safety and use of the diving board. That was acceptable to the zoning board, and they have approved it, as I said, in a resolution at the May meeting.
Okay, this was a couple of meetings coming, because we had stated the first time around that we wanted that removed. And for some reason came back a second meeting and it was still there. So I'm glad it finally achieved reducing the patio that was never approved in the first place. And plus, it's, the easement for the village sewer is now not covered by concrete. Did you
Right.
say you're in the process of removing the shaded area there? Crosshatch.
Yeah. Yeah, this crosshatch area. The dark area is the existing that's going to remain, and this grayed area is all of the section that's going to be removed. It'll be
My
replaced.
question was, I thought you said you're in the process of removing it as we speak.
No, we're not removing it yet. We don't have a permit yet.
Right, because we like to be assured that it's gonna be removed and probably come up with not probably, we did come up with a June 1st, 24 date for the removal.
Where we're gonna probably remove it before then. But as soon as we have a permit.
Well, we didn't want to interfere with the bathing season while you're out there with a jackhammer, so. We have
I don't
some
think
hope.
the owner didn't want to either, so I think the timing is actually good.
Okay. Thank you. Any comment from the board?
I have no comments.
Mike Smith?
No questions.
Mike Lefou?
No questions.
Sarah?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments.
Mary Ann, you have a resolution?
Yeah, whereas in December 2022, Rishi Sawhney applied for site development plan approval to legalize a pool patio on his property at 33 Osceola Avenue. And whereas the patio is located over public sewer, and the planning board directed him to remove the portion of the patio that lies atop the sewer easement. And whereas the applicant did remove the portion of the patio over the sewer easement, but still required a coverage variance, which the zoning board of appeals granted on May 23rd. Han Engineering reviewed the plans in a memoranda dated December 5th and December 30th, 2022, and March 31st, 2023, made a number of comments, most of which were addressed in subsequent submissions. And whereas the planning board held a public hearing on the application on December 7th, January 4th, April 4th, and August 2nd. And whereas the action is a type 2 action under secret and therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Sawney Residence prepared by Matthew Barron's architect. Sheets are designated, subject to 1, complying with Han's July 31st, 2023 memorandum, and 2, removing the portion of the patio over the sewer easement prior to June 1st, 2024. If the latter condition is not met, this site development plan approval is null and void.
Understood. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mary Ann. Do we have, I make a motion to approve the resolution as read.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Any opposed? No opposed. Well, thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Where's number 3? Where's number 4? Okay, number 4, 2023-18, 18 Hillside Terrace.
Good evening, everyone on the board. My name is Christian Lanza, representing Lawless and John Architect for 18 Hillside Terrace. How are you?
We're good. We see you, but we don't see the site plan.
I'm opening it up as we speak. So here we go. At the last meeting, there were a couple of comments that were brought up, one of them being part of the site plan, the construction entrance. Before I had it on the left side of the property. Then we decided to put it at the entrance to the driveway on this side. The other comment was showed the location of the maple tree being removed. He will call out for it. We are planting 3 new flowering dogwood trees on the left side of the property here. And in the back of the property, once again, if you guys recall, I had the drywalls all on the left side here, removing these trees that we had shown. In this new revised site plan, we have decided to put the drywalls underneath the driveway. So these trees will remain untouched. The other comment we had was the root protection, the critical root protection on the entire site. There's basically roots, critical roots at the entire site area of this property, so we added additional notes over here according to our discussion with the landscape architect. We added all these notes here that we're gonna have to comply to, and the contractor will also comply to before we begin construction. The other comment was to revise the, provide detail for tree protection, tree planting, everything is here, that was provided. These are all the calculations for the drainage system, so one Cortex is required, but we're gonna incorporate two Cortex, and we have those under the driveway. The other comment that was brought to our attention was the table for lot coverage was incorrect. We made all the revisions necessary, and as you can see here, there's a couple of properties. This is my 18 Hillside Terrace, my property here. There's a couple of properties, 3 Hillside Terrace, 14 Hillside Terrace, 12 Hillside Terrace, which are, have a higher percentage than we do. We do have an undersized lot, existing non-conforming undersized lot, so as a result, we have to, we're requesting a 289 square foot zoning board approval, which that's what we're seeking right now, for you guys to refer us to the zoning board. And the last thing was the floodplain, wetlands, and watercourse permits that were also submitted prior to the last submission. We're still waiting on approval from either Han Engineering or the village inspector to give us any wording on that. I did have a conversation with Han Engineering earlier today, and he told me that the wetlands and the watercourse seems to be okay. He has additional comments in there that we discussed, and he agreed to them. We can further discuss if you guys like. But that was everything that was brought up to our attention at the last meeting. So I'm open to comments. Or if you need me to show something else, I can do that too.
Go back to the site plan.
Yes, sir.
Blow it up a little bit in the backyard. Okay, that tree, the 20-inch gum tree,
Yes.
could you show on the plan the root protection so that when they're putting the driveway addition, that they don't run over the roots?
Yes.
I know it's about root protection, but it's not shown on the plans.
Well, it's actually showed, and I provide a whole separate plan. So here it is.
Oh, okay.
And
Well, how do we know the contractor's gonna looking at the right sheet, the correct sheet?
well, they will get the full set of plans. And
On the same-
before we begin, we're gonna have a site walkthrough, and we're gonna discuss that with the contractor. We're gonna be part of our inspections.
Hold on one second. Ed, you
It's
got-
on the same page. If you slide over to the other side, the site
okay.
is to the left of this.
All right.
Right.
Okay, it's on the same page. Okay, very good, thank you. There's a coverage issue I have here. Ed, you want to explain that with Doug?
You have to go to the ZBA.
But isn't
They
the
need a
coverage?
variance.
And the
Issue
table,
with
the
some
table you
numbers?
mean? In the table?
Yeah.
I had mentioned it to Christian before, the coverage that you're showing on your table for your lot is the existing, not the proposed.
Yes,
So
I
it's
actually
one-
spoke to Han Engineer about that, and I did fix it, so.
And there's a drainage issue.
Drainage, or a few drainage items, yep.
Okay, so you got to straighten out the drainage. And the coverage issue. Oh, and go back to the site plan. Didn't we want a floodplain line?
Yes.
Does he know? Go back to the site plan.
Yeah, yes, I did mention it to him.
Yeah, we did speak about that, and basically this is pretty much what I'm going to do. So we are in the 500-year storm here. All this area is the 100-year storm. So when I spoke to Han Engineering, they told me to basically offset this 25 feet. So this is what I will be showing to you guys.
Okay. The ZBA meets after our next meeting.
Yeah, the summer deadlines are 30 days notice.
Mhm.
So the deadline is passed for the August meeting. So they can come back with these corrections and they won't miss any time.
Okay, you got that?
When will be the meeting at?
It's in the end of September.
Okay,
And if you make those corrections, you could email them to me to take a look at ahead of time.
will do.
From what I understand, the drainage issue is can be critical. Okay,
Okay,
right, you got any questions for us? You know what, we want? Fix the coverage numbers. Address the drainage per Doug. And locate the floodplain. Now, is that line pertinent to whether the permit application is correct or not to the floodplain?
So floodplain is okay. He's out of the floodplain. It's really for the wetlands and watercourse
Okay,
And really for the buffers, not really for the
and for the buffer, yeah.
buffers, not wetlands.
okay, you got that?
I got it.
Okay. We'll see you next time.
Well, all right.
Oh, you got comment, Dan?
I have no comments. Thank you.
Mike?
So Christian, go back to your coverage chart. So, and just blow it up to just to show yours for the moment. 18 Hillside.
Want me to highlight it?
You can highlight it and blow it up some more. What I understand Christian to be. Did you already insert your on this that you highlighted, the 2051 proposed?
What basically I spoke to Doug from Han Engineering earlier today, and I just have to put revise this number. I have to change. So you can see here that I did make that change.
Right, so I'm looking at it and you have it changed at 2051.
Right.
That's what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah.
That hasn't been submitted yet, right?
Not yet. I spoke to Doug earlier today. It was just that one. When I went in the table, I wrote this number instead of this number.
That's okay. So let me see the 2051, which hasn't been submitted yet.
Right here.
Okay, so now how does it compare with that proposed coverage number being the correct number in the chart?
It doesn't change. That's pretty much this follows the same number this year, 26.5.
You mean in comparison with the others?
Right,
No comparison with the others.
right.
Well, basically there's a couple other properties, this one, there's a higher percentage of us. Us having a undersized lot. There's a couple of other
Okay.
ones.
Just on, and Doug, this again is total lot coverage.
On the
but
right,
apples.
on the right, but if you look at the number just to the left of that other column.
Yeah.
That's the one as far as the allowable. So it's either 132, that column, see
So
where
right
it's
here.
highlighted? It's that column there. Is the one that you usually compare it with.
Mhm. Okay,
There's a couple that are close to it.
right. Well, I would assume that there's one down the street, which is almost identical.
I think they use those the same numbers.
Okay, thanks.
Michael Fuco,
No questions.
Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody is raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, you understand what we need, I assume?
I do.
And we'll see you at the next meeting. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask.
No, the next meeting, we're basically coming, so just to understand this, guys, I'm gonna be at the next meeting, and that's when you guys are going to give me the referral to the zoning board. At the moment, I don't have a referral, I don't have approval.
If, I assume that you're going to fix what we asked for, and if that's the case, most likely, yes.
Yeah, it's minor comments, that's really not a big deal. The big deal at this point is the referral to the zoning, like the. Say
You'd
again?
be amazed. You'd be amazed how some little deals become big deals.
No, I understand, but my concern is this, if we didn't have another planning board before that zoning board, would I be approved and referred to the zoning board, or you say no?
If everything's corrected.
If the zoning board was before our next meeting, there was a chance that we might decide on that, but I can't guarantee you. I haven't thought about it.
No problem.
It wasn't a decision I had to make, so one less decision was very good for me.
Okay, so Ed, if you don't mind, I'm gonna call you tomorrow. Doug, I'm gonna follow up with you as well. I just want to make sure that all the items, open items at this point are addressed properly and avoid another, fifth, fourth meeting, planning board. was pretty sure that I addressed every single comment here. My clients are not happy at the moment, and there's nothing we can do, I guess, at this point.
Well, don't make small of the drainage problem.
No, I'm not saying it's small. I'm just saying that my drainage calculations are addressed. The only thing I have to do is,
Well, there's some
Spoke to
soil
Doug
issues.
about excuse me?
There's some soil issues that you have to settle with Doug.
Well, I spoke to Doug earlier today. Basically, it's a C-type soil. We have to do one additional deep test, which is not big. We did do a 36-inch deep soil test already and a percolation test already. The only difference is that the engineer did not go 24 inches below the drywall. So that's, once again, it's not a big deal. Everything else is pretty much, like I said before, he wanted me to show this 500-year storm and 100 years flood zone in the site plan, not on a separate sheet of paper, which I did to make it clear to everybody. Everything else that we discussed was the permits, which I did submit everything. I'm still waiting for final approval
Okay,
on
we're-
that.
All right, thank you. We'll see you next meeting. If you have any other questions, I think you exhausted your question, but if you didn't, you got any questions?
Ed, when is the deadline to the next meeting, Ed?
You can give us a call in the morning.
Excuse me?
Give us a call in the morning. We don't,
Will do.
2 weeks before the meeting's the first Wednesday of the month.
Okay, we'll see you at the next meeting and you'll have everything fixed, and then you could, if you got everything fixed correctly, you'll go to the ZBA.
So after
Thank you.
ZBA, I still have to come back to planning, guys?
After the ZBA,
We'll see.
we'll see. Probably not, but you never know. Can't commit to that.
Okay, no, I'm just asking. You're asking me to ask questions, I'm asking.
I can't commit on the,
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
So.
all right, next up is number 5, 2023-16, 202 West Clinton Avenue. I'm going to request Mike Bufuco to be the chairman on this. I will be recused and sitting in the audience, making sure the applicant doesn't get out of hand.
You thought I was pushy after that last
We're gonna, just so we can. I should be. That's okay. Can we see inside?
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. David Steinmetz from the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz. Pleased to be back before your board here this evening representing Stephen and Nadia Harrison. First and foremost, I want to thank the board and staff for allowing me to do this live. I know it's somewhat out of your more recent protocol. I wanted to do this live because I've done enough of these meetings on Zoom, and it's sometimes difficult for us as applicants to see and hear precisely who on the board is speaking. And I really felt like, in light of what I learned that had preceded tonight, it was important for me to be here live. And I'm also pleased that my client, Steve Harrison, is here live. So I appreciate the fact that you agreed to this. I will try to be as efficient as possible. I'm joined this evening by Cyrus, our project engineer from Integral Engineering. I think you guys all know the site at 202 West Clinton. We're in the 1F20 half-acre zoning district. It's a half acre. And I'm here tonight simply to get your board to agree to refer us to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We are very well aware that we need a significant area variance from the zoning board with regard to coverage. And I was surprised that the application was not getting referred to the zoning board. We were recently retained by the Harrisons, and my goal is to answer your questions so that we can get to the zoning board and that I can deal with the issues that I know I need to deal with before the zoning board. What Steve and Nadia and I want to try to accomplish tonight is to explain to you what they did, that they were not at fault when they purchased this property, what they went through in acquiring this property, based upon some of the questions that I understand you all asked, and I have had some opportunity to discuss this with staff. I get the fact that you all sitting there in the village of Irvington, where coverage is of critical importance, and there are few who know how significant coverage is more than I do, having spent literally decades in front of this board in this village dealing with this. It's important to me to make sure you know what, in my opinion, an innocent purchaser went through in trying to acquiring this property, and now finding himself and herself in this situation. Just a couple of quick facts. They bought the house in 2022 for 1.7 million. They used one of the preeminent local brokers to help them find a house here in Irvington. They did retain counsel for the acquisition, and I'm going to get to the details of that. I was not counsel of in connection with the acquisition, so everything that I'm telling you, I have learned either from my clients or from their counsel. They bought this property. They fell in love with Irvington. They fell in love with the property. They saw the property. They understood what they were going to be paying for the house, the surroundings, the real estate taxes, and they ultimately sought to expand their rear patio. As Steve is going to tell you in his own words in a moment, this is not the first house that the Harrisons had purchased. They did not think they were doing anything wrong by commencing work to build their patio. They had absolutely and unquestionably no idea about the coverage requirement in the village of Irvington. They had absolutely no idea what the coverage was on the site at the time they were beginning to do this modest patio expansion of about 270 square feet. And the reason they were doing the patio expansion was they wanted to have a nice table and chairs in their backyard that would accommodate 6 to 8 people sitting around a table. It's a lovely backyard. And you all, I'm sure, are probably at this point quite well aware. There's a deck, there's a patio, there's a hot tub that's surrounded by a deck. The property, as I understand it, unquestionably exceeds the maximum allowable building coverage. 3,230 square feet is allowed. There is 5,682 square feet, which would include the patio extension that's proposed. That would bring it to 76% over the allowable coverage, 176%. I've handled a lot of applications in Irvington on a lot of different properties in Irvington. I've never had 176%. I've never had a property that presents with this kind of coverage at the time of acquisition. So they bought the property in March of 2022. At the time they bought it, they had a reasonable belief that all the construction was lawfully done. So let's talk about, and that's really the essence of why I'm here. What did they do? So they hired a lawyer. Lawyer negotiated a contract for 1.7 million. At no time did the seller represent that there were any issues with regard to coverage. At no time did the seller represent that they had had any difficulty with the village of Irvington. And in fact, the record begins to show us that this property has been through an awful lot over the years since it was built. Certificates of occupancy were issued in connection with this property in 1980.
David, bring the microphone closer to you. Thanks.
You can take it out of the stand.
It'll make it easier like this, and if I decide to sing, I promise I'll take it out of the stand.
David, just stand to the side to the public.
Sure.
More that way.
Good. Certificates of occupancy, and to me, this was really important for you to understand. 1988 for the house, 89 for the what was listed as above ground pool. There was never an above ground pool. 1991, 1994, 2006, 2006 again. Building permits issued in 2018, 2018 electrical, 2018 plumbing, 2018 another electrical, 2018 another electrical. These are all in April. My point being that, and all of this, I should say, comes from Mr. and Mrs. Harrison's title report. Their lawyer went to All New York Title, ordered title like every purchaser everywhere, including in the village of Irvington, and they got a municipal report. The municipal report to an objective lawyer indicates there's been a lot of activity on this property. It's been through the building department for review multiple times over 20 some odd years, more than 20, 30 years. And clearly the building department's been out there and people know that there's been work done here. The interesting thing is, that when they bought the house, they were lucky enough that they had been handed a survey, a certified survey prepared by a licensed surveyor that showed everything. And this was done in 2021. They bought the house in March of 22. When did you first see it, Steve?
Like January, February.
Okay, so right at the beginning of 2022, they find the house, they hire a lawyer, they get a title report. The title report and the lawyer locate from the seller a survey that's from the preceding year. That's significant to me as a real estate lawyer, because a lot of times, especially in the village of Irvington, we find survey maps that are decades old. The properties are old. A lot of times the survey maps are old. This was a relatively new survey, and the survey indicated to an objective, reasonable purchaser, oh, I'll check it out. I got a driveway, I got a loop driveway, I got a house, I've got a deck around the house. I saw it when I did the house inspection with the broker. I have a patio in the back. So for Steve and Nadia, they got a survey. Nothing unusual in the survey. Seems to be okay. Their lawyer runs title. Their lawyer says, okay, there's a lot of activity in connection with this. And interestingly, Gene Huey, and I don't know if anybody else in the room knows Gene Huey or knew Gene Huey. I knew Gene Huey. Ed knew Gene Huey. Caesar knew Gene Huey. I was a young lawyer when I met Gene Huey back in the late 80s. Gene issued a CO, or excuse me, a certificate of compliance in connection with an above ground pool in March of '89. There was no above ground pool. Maybe Gene did not have a category for hot tub or spa, or didn't know what to call it. But it was a hot tub. The other thing that's interesting, as I looked at the title report that the lawyer got as she was beginning to do the analysis and try to help advise the Harrisons in connection with the acquisition, she gets a property data card that was prepared by the town of Greenburgh. We all know you, the village of Irvington, are in the town of Greenburgh, and the town of Greenburgh assessor, Edie McCarthy, prepares the property data cards and assesses the property. I spoke to Edie directly about this. Edie has her property assessment card. It reflects the property. This was actually updated in 2021, same year as the survey. And she's got the taxes showing it $75,000. The second sheet of her property data card, which was in the title report, shows a house built in '87. It shows the structure. It shows that it's surrounded by a deck, by a patio. It matches what's on the 2021 Hoppy survey. And interestingly enough, and I had never really studied one of Edie's property cards before, but for this, I kind of needed to look closely. Edie's showing the spa. She's got a category for it in her codes, and she calls it out here as having been built in '87. So whether it was built in '87 or '89, when Gene issued the certificate of compliance, something was built that was a pool-like thing, like a hot tub, which is actually a hot tub or a spa, and it was built sometime, presumably when the house was originally built. That's what the lawyer knew. Now, interestingly enough, she was sufficiently confused by the fact that there was a reference to it in '89, that she knew it was located outside the house. She knew it was not an an above ground pool. An inquiry with the broker revealed there was never an above ground pool in the property. So I got to give her credit. This particular lawyer, and not all transactional lawyers doing a basic house deal in the village of Irvington or anywhere in the county, whom I know, actually get in their car and go to the building department. She got in her car from Rye and went to the village of Irvington and went in, and I am told, and this is hearsay, and I'm reporting what I was told. It was not my work. She went in, Ed wasn't there. She spoke to, quote, a woman in the building department, close quote, and was told, oh yeah, the spa, the reference to the pool is the spa. And Steve, that is what you were told by your lawyer. So I'm doing all this because I want you to know I'm not happy these folks bought a house with a ton of coverage. I'm not happy that I'm here, and I'm not looking forward to going to your zoning board, which I know well, to try to pitch an area variance. What I am here to do is make sure you understand these folks, in my opinion, and I hope you believe me, are innocent purchasers. They did what I think any of you would have done. They found a house, they fell in love with Irvington, they did their due diligence, they hired a lawyer, they relied on professionals, and with all due respect to the individuals who you probably all, some of you may know, who lived in this house for 20 some odd years, they're the ones that somehow built a deck, built a patio, did all this stuff to get this property to well over 150, 160, 170% coverage. So did they do something wrong by coming in and asking for another 270 square feet so they could have a table with 6 chairs around it? I don't think they did. I'd like to try to help them get their table and chairs. I don't think I've ever been hired to get to do a table and chairs. And when I got this phone call, and I don't normally do this, I love coming to Irvington. You guys are always fun and challenging, and your coverage is your coverage. I actually felt really bad for the Harrisons and thought on this one, I'm actually going to see if I can do something good because I do feel bad for what they are going through. They have inherited a piece of property that for whatever reason is the way it is. The good news for them, they did their little coverage chart. I know they're above the coverage of everybody around them. There are 5 different letters that have been submitted to you from neighbors who support this. So the good news for me is I don't have neighbors who are going to climb all over this, to the best of my knowledge. When I show up in front of your zoning board and I deal with my 5 factors and my balancing test, I don't think I'm going to have neighbor opposition. And I do think the benefit to the applicant outweighs the detriment to the community in the surrounding area. Most importantly, maybe not most importantly, but of equal importance, Cyrus is going to tell us that there is no adverse impact to drainage in the surrounding properties. And he can describe it, he may have already done it in prior meetings. There's a rather elaborate stormwater system on the property. Steve knows about it. Cyrus knows about it. One of the first questions I said when I tried to do my due diligence on the matter is, are we flooding everybody around us with 176% coverage? Are we going to create a significant problem if you add the 6th and 5th and 6th chairs and expand the patio by 270 square feet? I'll let Cyrus, who's a PE, speak to that. My understanding is the answer is no. So, Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you briefly to just, all I'm really asking is confirm what you went through on your acquisition, if you would, introduce yourself, and maybe most importantly, and this, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I think is important. I want Steve in his own words to explain why he's not standing in front of you tonight saying, oh my goodness, I'm going to rip out the deck, I'm going to rip out the hot tub, and I'm going to rip out the patio, and I'm going to bring it into 100% coverage and not nothing more. I want you to understand in his words why he's not prepared to do that.
So, hi, I'm Stephen Harrison. My wife and I have a business. My business has been headquartered in Tarrytown. For a long time, I kind of fell in love with the river towns. My wife fell in love with the river towns. We lived in the city for 20 plus years. This was our first opportunity to buy our suburban home. We were very excited about it. We found this beautiful home that we were excited about. I bought 2 homes prior, so I'd been through the process, didn't have any kind of negative outcomes or anything like that that would make me wary of anything. We went with a well-known, reputable realtor. She was great. She helped us find this house. She made the recommendation to the attorney we ultimately used. Our presumption was, because of their relationship, that she does a lot of these, right? Because she's so successful in the area. So there was no reason for me to believe, even though I didn't know her, right? There was no reason for me to believe that she wouldn't be competent. She did everything that I've seen in previous purchases of homes that we've done. So again, there was really no reason for me to feel, that anything was amiss. We do love the town. We've come here with a lot of excitement, obviously, because of our first suburban home. We made friends with the neighbors. We got involved with the school. Our girls, 6-year-old twin girls, they love Dow's Lane. They enjoy everything about the town. When we found out about this, it wasn't till over a year after we bought the property. It was at the first one of these meetings that we had, or that was over the Zoom session on, where we found out that there was this coverage problem. At that point, I reached out to Cyrus to help us, work out the drawings that were requested. After that meeting, it was then recommended, based off of this variance problem that we had found that we had, that we should reach out and talk to David, so we did. I was on both calls previous to this, so obviously we've been very invested in the outcome. My feeling in general is that, you know, we are definitely the victims in the situation. I'm a very transparent person. I don't try to hide things. When we found out that we were building the extension to the patio, which I honestly didn't think was anything that was wrong, because I owned a house in Astoria, Queens, where my entire property was cement. There was no impermeable or permeable surfaces, but a little garden. And then I owned a house in New Jersey where the area coverage was what was attached to your house. So we had built a deck to that house, and I knew that the deck could not be longer than the coverage area, but we were able to put pavers all over the backyard. So I really honestly did not know that there was this coverage area specific to Irvington. And then when we got the letter in the mail, we immediately called and kind of, you know, started this process. So at the end of the day, I do feel we're kind of victims in this. You know, I realized that somebody before me, you know, definitely took advantage of the situation in this board, and I feel terrible for that. I just feel strongly that my family, you know, me, my wife, my 2 6-year-olds shouldn't have to pay penance for somebody else's sins. You know, we love this town, and we're just hoping that we can continue with the home that we bought, that we, you know, valued at 1.7 million because of these things being involved with the house. That we pay taxes of over 60,000, which I can't believe I'm paying taxes 60,000, but that was part of because we had these things in the house, and I really don't want to have to, you know, deface or devalue my property based off of a wrongdoing somebody else did. So I think that's. Thank you.
Cyrus, would you just hit the drainage issue very briefly, just so that that's in the record and the board is clear if they have questions?
Yeah, I could share my screen. So the general topography of the area, there's a hill there at the bottom of the hill. There's a housing complex and then the Hudson River behind. There are some drainage structures on the property. We haven't done a complete survey of it, but again, we have consulted with the Harrisons, and we're prepared to increase the capacity as much as necessary in order to accommodate the storm systems.
Happy to answer any questions that the board may have. And I guess one other quick addendum. Since your last meeting, I assume you know this, but since the last meeting, Cyrus and Ed met. The coverage calculations that you all apparently indicated at the July meeting were incorrect, were updated by Cyrus, and I believe Ed and Cyrus are now, the numbers in the record are now accurate.
Correct. That and I want to clarify, that was a mistake on my end, and I do apologize for that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for presenting that side of the story for us. Really appreciate it. And regardless, sorry that you're in this position. No one likes to find out that they bought something different than they thought. Right. That's unfortunate. I think it would be important for us to re-highlight the 3 different scenarios that we're talking about here, and it's illustrated on this. You might have it there, but we have the last legal version of the property.
Cyrus, why don't you bring it up? Right down the bottom, make it as big as you can.
So just want to make sure everybody's clear on this.
Mhm.
So the bottom left, as far as I understand, that is the last legal version of the property at 140 something percent over 143% over allowable. That has permits, everything. It's good. The one in the middle is what you got when you moved in, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Correct. That's got the addition in the back and the patio and the hot tub area.
Right. And so that's at 172. And the third is the proposed, which is the finishing.
Getting us to 176.
Right. And was some of that work started?
Yes,
So
that's how this all started. This, as Steve tried to explain, he began having the pavers installed in the back, not thinking he was doing anything different from what he had done on other properties, did not think he needed any kind of approval. And that's when I gather somebody realized that that required approvals, and he received, as he put it, the letter telling him he needed to deal with this.
Okay. So before I give the rest of my opinion, I want to poll the board. I'd like to get your opinion on the existing that's existing non-conforming and the proposed as two separate items. You have those can theoretically be split up if necessary to go to the board. So if you can give us your opinion, but represent each individually.
So Jan, I'm happy to go first.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. All right. I wasn't here last month, although I read the minutes.
Hope you're feeling better.
I am, thanks. So originally, I thought that they were 115% over. Is that now become 143%? I thought the last legal.
It's 143.
It's 143.
Okay. 143% of what's.
Wow, 43% over, 43% over.
Right, it's over what's allowed, but that application was. It was already over at the time of the last of that application, right?
Yeah, it has a variance to be there.
Okay. So I just want to focus on the 2006 and the 2021 coverage drawing. So if we can do that.
Can you zoom in and then keep the left two boxes in view? Thanks.
All right. Now, so what is on the 2021 drawing? And what is, so the first one that you circled, David, is what?
Is the deck, is the deck area, the deck area surrounding the outdoor hot tub. That's the deck area. And the second, if I may, Mr. Smith, is the patio area where the family sits and grills, and they were trying to fill in this somewhat triangular shaped area with 270-ish, 271 square feet of patio level pavers
Correct, yeah, the same stuff that's there.
to allow for a table and chairs.
So, well, my first question, on the 2006 drawing,
Yes,
is there a hot tub?
on the 2006 drawing.
Correct.
There's nothing illustrated on
There's
it.
nothing illustrated there.
Absolutely.
So when you were talking about the pool, the certificate of compliance for the pool in 1989, you were suggesting, I thought, that the hot tub was built in 1989.
So
I can, if you'd like.
go ahead.
So further
Right.
research that no title company would do. Making sure it's clear on that.
Go right
As
ahead.
we open the folder up and there's a hot tub inside the house.
So let's be clear on that. And I appreciate Ed saying it so that he said it first. Apparently, when Gene was out there in '89, somebody built a hot tub inside the house. Why, Gene, you recall,
You had it, Cyrus, right there.
why, Gene, you called it an above ground pool? I can't speak to that, but that's one of the reasons why council, when she saw the reference to the above ground pool, and she knew from her client that there was a backyard hot tub, and maybe she looked at her title report and saw the town's assessor knew of the spot, she came into town hall to say, into village hall to say, what's going on?
So earlier,
Go ahead. Mhm.
and I do this with respect, you didn't mention anything about the indoor pool. I thought you were suggesting to us that the C of O, the certificate of compliance in 1989 was for the outdoor hot tub. What I'm hearing now is the possibility that it was for the indoor hot tub.
That is precisely correct.
Okay,
And
which would make sense because on 2006, on that drawing, there is no hot tub.
to the best of our knowledge, And I appreciate and I'm glad it's unfolded precisely the way I hoped it would, that someone would ask the question. And I'm even happier that Ed has been the one to answer it. We believe, and none of us, we don't know. We believe they moved the hot tub outside somewhere in 2006. There's an awful lot of activity during those years, and there's all I know is that I've got a CO for addition/interior alteration to existing finished basement. Somebody's doing a lot of work there. I don't know what they're doing.
So one thing I didn't hear in the presentation is was that there was a 2006 application to the planning board
Correct,
and to the zoning board.
correct.
Has anybody researched those applications to see what they were?
They match the 2006 survey.
They matched this survey. So the owner at that time was representing that the 2006 diagram as we see it was accurate.
Presumably.
CO.
Hmm?
At the issuance of the CO for the work.
So it did not have a hot tub outside, and it did not have any of the decking that your client eventually sees, right?
Probably, possibly. I don't.
So at some point, I'm gonna go on. Now you get the 2021 drawing. Where is that drawing from?
Cyrus?
The 2021 coverage diagram was from the survey at the time of the sale.
No, I know that, but the survey was prepared by someone. Was it publicly filed?
No, it's for the closing.
It's for the closing. So it was a privately done survey.
Sure.
Which the only thing about the survey then is that the person is reflecting what is currently there.
No question about it.
As opposed to what is legally entitled to be there.
So,
Well, if I may, the survey from 2021 is reflected in the town assessor's report. The town assessor's property card shows this deck and it shows this patio.
Okay.
which
yeah.
We can have a long discussion on how it gets there.
Yeah.
That gets there by a field visit in 2013,
Yeah.
and it doesn't, you can't. I won't go into very much detail on this, but there's an old card and a new card available online, and you must look at the two of them and make sure that there's permits for the difference between the two.
So,
A
so.
lot of brokers don't do that.
So for the record, the tax assessor, when I called her, she told me her records reflected there was an inspection done by her office in 2014. So to the best of my knowledge, based upon my inquiry, certainly by 2014, the hot tub had moved outside. And Mr. Smith, I want to just make sure there's no disconnect. I never represented that survey stands for the legalization of anything out there. I know better, you know better. But what it does is tell an innocent purchaser that it's been surveyed and these things are here and the surveyor found them. And there's no reason for an inquiry based upon that. And based upon the fact that there are no pending violations in the village.
So here's my own thought on this. And that is, this would be no different than if your client was coming to us and proposing for the first time what we are seeing
On the right,
on the right.
the middle.
And so your client would have to tell us why we should allow the coverage of the hot tub, why we should allow the coverage of the deck, as opposed to the way I believe that this was initially presented, which was more like, well, I'm here to legalize something that's existing. No, I'm looking at it as why should we allow it to be done initially, ab initio? I mean, why should we, what is it about it? Instead of you inheriting a problem and trying to legalize it, if you were doing it for the first time, is this what you would want to be building? And then tell us why you needed it.
So,
you could see from, 33 Osceola, that the mere fact that that patio had been existing for a while didn't deter us from asking that a portion of it be removed, because it wasn't there with our imprimatur. So what I'd rather do is instead of trying to place blame or whatever, trying to understand why it is that you, the client, the applicant, would like to see the hot tub and the decking surrounding it and the other portion of the deck. And perhaps there's an alternative in order for you to be able to have the table and 6 chairs and 8 chairs and whatever number of chairs you want.
So I'm going to respectfully disagree with your analysis completely.
Okay.
I believe that argument and that discussion takes place in front of the zoning board of appeals, not in front of the planning board. That's not within your jurisdiction. I will deal with the 5 factors. I will deal with why I believe a variance is required at this time for this applicant to legalize these installations that have been in your village, not mine, in your village for 10 years. And I'll deal with that as a matter of law under the New York State Village Law. I don't have to, with all due respect, Mr. Smith, and I'm happy to do it. I don't have to convince you that I'm entitled to the variance. I have to convince the zoning board of appeals. So what you've done is you've said to me, David, I want you to start ab initio as if you were coming in to file for this application. To me, that's the incorrect legal and factual analysis. Why? Because your village's records, as revealed to a reasonably prudent lawyer doing a reasonably prudent analysis and a reasonably prudent buyer coming to your village, your records revealed that there was nothing wrong. So the reason that I came in trying to explain it the way I did is because you're right. I absolutely want the 3 of you to feel bad for Steve and Nadia Harrison because they didn't do anything wrong. You have an onerous coverage requirement. I know that. I'll deal with that if I have to deal with that. But for you to not give them the chance to demonstrate why the benefit to the applicant outweighs the detriment to the public, you're taking away their legal right under New York state law. They have a right to do that.
So while you are certainly free not to tell me why they would like it, I don't know that really is in your best interest in order to try to convince me.
I would never not do it. What you think is my best interest, I will do. So why do they?
But secondly, now I miss.
I'll go remember. Why do they want it? And I tried to have Steve cover that, and I think he kind of did. Why do they want it? Because they probably wouldn't have paid $1.7 million and $70,000 in taxes for their property if they knew they couldn't have the wraparound deck or the patio in the back or the deck around the hot tub. It's unfortunate, and I'm so glad I wasn't their transactional lawyer because I'd be sitting here flipping out. And I'm not accusing the transactional lawyer of doing something wrong, but I've spent already enough hours worrying about this gentleman and his wife and their family because I feel bad for what they've been put through and what they're being put through. And you don't have to agree with me, but I'm here tonight live in person. I put on a suit and tie. Maren made me put on a tie, but I'm here honestly because this one's just not right. And so for me as a lawyer, for me as a land use lawyer, this one brings me into the village of Irvington on August 2nd because this is wrong. And I can't wait for Artie Semitis and the zoning board to climb way over me, and I'll deal with that at that time. I believe they did nothing wrong. I believe something happened in your village. I don't want to fault anyone in your village, but this guy who lived here snuck one by all of you. So if you've got a little bit of an edge, which I feel like you do when you ask him to justify why it should be there and take it ab initio. No, the edge should be against Fernando Mateo, who somehow between 06 and 14 snuck in an awful lot of stuff in your village. And I don't know how he did it, but he did it. And my guy pays 1.7 to move into your village, pays over $60,000 in taxes. And he and his broker and everybody think, I got a wonderful survey. I got no violations of record. I'm here to inquire about the spa and the above ground pool. Oh, the spa and the above ground pool, it's one and the same. I got to give the lawyer credit, Mike, for coming to Village Hall and making that inquiry. I told Steve, I don't know if I would have done that. I'm glad I'm not on this. I don't know if I would have come in and asked that question.
So I have one more question and then I'll leave it. When you came and saw the property, there's an unfinished patio. And someone who would be knowledgeable about how this village would run would ask the question, do you have a permit for the patio?
Is it an unfinished patio?
Oh, I'm sorry. The patio was finished, so the only part that wasn't finished was when I didn't know we needed the permit, we started the work. So then there was a part of it that was unfinished, but when we bought the property, it was finished.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. All right, then I don't want to monopolize.
Dan, did you have anything before I go?
Well, I certainly sympathize with the buyer. They got the professional real estate broker, great lawyer representing you. Then it's 8 months later, you're doing your pavers in the back and events happen and now you're here. So my question, well, coverage obviously is still an issue with us, even with the neighbors. You know, you have the neighbors, the 7 letters of your neighbors supporting your work. But you intend to leave the hot tub in the backyard there?
I do, yeah.
So I inquired of Stephen Nadia. This is Irvington. I know Irvington a lot better than you do. They're going to want you to rip stuff out.
Right.
You're gonna have to take out portions of the deck along the side of the house, the patio, or the decking around the hot tub. And the answer is, and he'll give it to you again in his own words. He did it a lot faster than I do. He wants his 6-year-old girls to be able to enjoy the stuff that he believes he bought. It makes the hot tub a little bit more functional to be able to get out on all sides and enjoy it. The decking is magnificent. It's one of the reasons he paid for the house. The patio is really nice, but it doesn't fit a table and 6 chairs. So unbeknownst to him, he starts to spend what he thought was going to be a couple of hours to build a patio to get a table and chairs.
Gotcha.
So that's it.
Dan, do you have anything else besides the hot tub?
Let me just. Well, as you know, you mentioned Asalia 33, Asalia, you know, where they did reduce the coverage. Again, you mentioned as well, you know, we'll be asking to remove parts of the patio, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess what we have to come up with is how to.
Can I just add something on?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
What you doing here?
So I don't want it to come off as if we were entirely, you know, steadfast and like, no, we're not going to do it, right? So we did, if you can see on one of the diagrams, we did say that we would remove this. I don't see a lot of purpose in it, so we were okay to remove that. We did talk about removing part, I know it doesn't count, but removing part of the driveway and putting in a tree with some drainage capabilities. There's also quite a bit of an existing drainage within the property already, but we were even talking about for the addition, which isn't shown here, the one that we want to do, even putting an additional drainage part here to then drain into this manhole drainage here. So I don't want to come off and see like we're indignant and we're like, no, we're not going to do anything. Like we want to try and help.
And then a question for Cyrus. I mean, does the drainage look like there's not enough drainage on the property currently, or? You haven't determined it?
I mean, it's hard to determine how big these structures are, but there's, I believe, 2 precast drainage structures, storage chambers. Again, we haven't been able to do a proper survey of what drainage structures on the property.
Okay. I'm good for the time being. Thanks.
Okay. Great.
Mike, can I just? If they move forward, they would have to come back here for drainage and pool safety.
Okay.
So we don't want
Yeah,
to see
yeah.
them spending any
So
money
hold
on
it
that
up.
at this
Yeah, I
point.
got it. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, everything is on hold until the zoning board variance for this, if I remember.
Should we get there?
Okay. So as I said, I sympathize with you. Part of the reason is I have my own similar story of buying a house in Irvington and renovating and incurring huge costs that I didn't expect. And part of what I feel here is, and unfortunate for you, it's an unfortunate thing for a lot of people that live here. It happens. It's not a totally uncommon story. We hear that a lot. We hear, I came in, I bought the house, I didn't know. I know other people who have the same story. I had to cut back on my plans on what I wanted to do because of coverage. I had no idea about the coverage too. So while it is an unfortunate story and an unfortunate situation, It is not, the most unique thing about this is really the size of the patio, but not necessarily the expense, at least in my opinion, or that it happened.
Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have to. To the extent you're sharing a personal anecdote for relevance, were the things that you were dealing with installed already, or you had plans to install things?
No, they were parts of the home that we didn't know about, that didn't come up in inspection, and it was a very same situation. It existed in one way. We didn't know, it wasn't disclosed to us. And when we went to make changes, similar to your client, we found out, and it was very expensive to remedy, and we had to change our plans.
Thank you for sharing that.
And I have many neighbors with very similar stories. And from your presentation, it sounds like you're saying that a lot of thought went into whether or not it was already legal. You gave a lot of examples of why they would assume that everything there was fine.
So you're absolutely correct. I can't speak to your situation and the due diligence you or your counsel did. What I had no choice but to do was to, before I walk in here and address you, try to figure out whether I concluded he did something wrong and whether I concluded his counsel did something wrong, because that would change the way I feel about your ability, if not potential obligation, to try to allow him to pitch the zoning board. And again, I know I got hurdles with the zoning board, but to me, it's relevant in terms of the factors that I will have to establish in front of the zoning board.
So that would assume that we know permits are required for this type of work.
Permits for the deck and the
Right.
hot tub.
We're buying the house and we're thinking about whether or not it's legal. We know that permits have to be done. So I guess my first question about that is, why then the start of additional work without a permit?
Because, yeah, maybe you should.
So I can answer again, Again, so I had two homes prior to this, one in Astoria, Queens, one in New Jersey. Astoria, we never did any renovation, so I don't have an example of going and getting, permits or whatever, but the entire 40 by 100 lot was paved. It was cement or other things, right? So there was no impervious thing there. In New Jersey, we did do an addition. We added a deck extension and we added pavers in the backyard. And in that case, the coverage area was the deck extension. The pavers had no restriction because pavers weren't inclusive. It was things that were attached to the house. So those were the only experiences I had. And I presume that the same situation existed within Westchester, Irvington, whatever you consider. And we started the work assuming we were doing nothing wrong. When we found out we were doing something wrong via letter, I immediately called to find out what I had to do. So
At that point, you didn't even know you had a coverage issue.
yeah, I had no idea. I just thought that I started building something. I didn't know the rules and I broke the rule inadvertently and I wanted to remedy it. And that's all
I totally get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
For me, I just have trouble with the story because it sounds like we're being told a lot of thought went into whether or not work was legal in the patio. But then I'm also hearing I didn't know about any of this stuff and I started.
Nobody said that a lot of thought went into
That was
doing
the
the
entire
patio.
point at the beginning of your.
The entire point of the beginning of the presentation was to explain the thought that went into the due diligence and the acquisition. That predates anything having to do with the patio.
Right, that due diligence, why,
Well, might I add?
Hang on.
Oh, sorry.
what about that due diligence is relevant to this? Because it sounded like you were saying the due diligence was at least partially in order to determine whether or not all of that work was legal,
All of the prior work was legal, exactly.
which means.
The lawyer, Mike, had no knowledge that her client was going to come in a year and a half later with a 270 square foot addition to the patio. What we're here for legally right now, what I'm trying to deal with is I'd love to get the 270 square feet, but I got to worry about the fact that this village allowed Mateo to do what Mateo did. So I got to deal with that. So that's the presentation, because if I were sitting on the other side of this dais, I'd be trying to find out whether this particular purchaser acted responsibly or not. So the beginning of the presentation, and I apologize if it wasn't clear to you, the beginning of this presentation was to demonstrate, and I'll go back to my first line, what a reasonably prudent buyer would do or should do. So a reasonably prudent buyer should hire a lawyer, a reasonably prudent lawyer should run title, a reasonably prudent lawyer running title should look at the history of building permits and COs. And boy, a reasonably prudent lawyer coming down to Village Hall and inquiring about a discrepancy between above ground pool and a hot tub, yeah, that shows that these folks on the way in, forget the 270 square feet right at the moment, on the way in, yeah, they acted normally, they acted reasonably. I don't believe the Village of Irvington should, in effect, punish them for what was there, for the middle. You may say, look, we're not going to give you the 270 square foot addition for the chairs. I get that. That to me is a different legal analysis, but I have no choice but to try to legalize what's there, because I got to leave him with a legal lot. Paid $170 for it. He's going to be charged $65,000 a year in taxes. I'm not leaving this without trying to leave him with something that can be purchased.
I understand. My last question was about the tax. You said the assessor, something about an assessor card.
Yes.
Does that have anything to do with? Oh, there's any relation to them to the town of Irvington? Is it a Irvington tax? Is it town of Greenberg? Is it?
The town of Greenberg assesses for the village, but I'll let staff address that. The town, Edie McCarthy is your assessor. She works for the town of Greenberg. You do not have to the best of my knowledge, there is no local
We
assessor.
use the assessment from Greenberg
But.
for the tax base.
Yeah, but Greenberg doesn't make a determination
I'm
that
saying
what's there is
their documents have
documented or
nothing to
legal
do
or
with-
not. Yeah, they just do
wanted
it
to
based
make
on
sure.
what's there.
The relevance, to the extent that was not clear. Again, and I apologize, Mary, I hope it's not. And Mike, I apologize, because obviously, but my beginning was somewhat lost in terms of communicating it to you. I went through the exercise that I went through because I went through what I would have tried to understand as a lawyer if I was looking at this title report, because I want you to understand he and his lawyer before the 270 square feet. Again, let's play with just the middle. Should they have known? If I'm sitting there, should these folks have known that Mateo pulled one over? That's the question I'd be asking as a loan use guy. Should they be able to figure out that Mateo pulled one over on the village? Edie McCarthy's really smart. They probably all know that. She's one of the preeminent assessors in our county. She used to run the Assessors Association. So when I saw this, I was like, I'm calling Edie, and I'm going to find out what went on here. She said we went out there in 2013 or 2014. So she knew this stuff was there. Her job is not to figure out whether it's legal, whether Mateo got permits, but she reflects it on there and she calls out the spa. So if I am the lawyer representing him and I see this, I think I don't feel like there's something, I'm not being clued into something that's wrong here. And this is the part that fascinated me, she still came to Village Hall. I don't know if you know, lawyers don't go, how many lawyers walk into your office
Couple of weeks.
and conduct a CO analysis on a purchase? I didn't finish the question, Mr. Maron.
I'll answer it better. 1 out of 2 dozen, or 2 out of 2 dozen a
Okay.
week.
All right.
That's a better number for you.
There are a lot of lawyers that go to Village Hall and do their own due diligence on municipal searches, in my opinion, in my experience.
All right, I think we've gone over this enough. I'd like to poll, Dan, give me your opinion.
Well, I
You
just
more
have a
questions?
question in reference to what you just said. Shouldn't, you're bringing this before the planning board, shouldn't it be in civil court what transpired between the village? Oh, no,
The seller?
no, I mean, what transpired with legally with 2000, the 2 different dates, and now all of a sudden we're trying to clarify what happened in the past.
The cause of action against the village.
No, okay.
We have no cause of action against the seller, because most contracts, as your counsel will advise you, don't have any reps that survive the closing. So if you don't do your due diligence before the
Right.
closing, you're screwed the day after.
But the client, obviously, the village resident did the right things, seemingly got the real estate broker, the lawyer to represent it.
Bingo. That's exactly our point.
And now we're in the quandary of,
We're trying to clean up somebody else's mess that we didn't inherit, we paid for.
Okay, so it's not only 270 square feet, it's also what transpired with the outdoor spa and.
Otherwise, I have 76 or what the delta between the, what'd you say, 140? I have 30% coverage that apparently was never addressed properly.
Anything else, Dan?
No, I'm fine.
I guess before I poll, Sarah, is there anything online, anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Dan, if you could tell us just which way you're leaning, you can either give us a, total or
For the
for
270
both, or
feet?
if you have a different opinion about I'm interested in where you're leaning, because they're asking to go to the zoning board. We're obviously not doing a vote. But this will impact their trip to the zoning board.
Well, I mean, the 270 feet isn't a deal breaker in my book, but the coverage still is pretty high. Again, your surrounding neighbors seem to be happy with the project and its impact. So unless we try to discuss the overall overage in coverage amongst ourselves, or
So you're saying you're leaning more towards,
letting them go to the ZBA, but again, we sort of have to tweak down the coverage, like say knock down a wall or something like that.
Mike?
Well, we're not talking about letting them go to the ZBA now. Because there's only 3 of us,
Marianne?
number one. And number 2.
Well,
Well,
Oh,
it's in 2 months. I
I'm
think,
sorry,
the
were
next
you
one.
asking?
Are they able to go to the ZBA?
Well, you could say you're okay with them going to the ZBA. I think you have to decide whether you want to, just sending them to the ZBA, the ZBA is going to come
Yeah,
back to you and
well-
say, what does the planning board think about it?
So that's easy. So I'm not ready to send them to the ZBA because I don't have to figure out who was at fault, although I will disagree with you as to who I think was at fault. And since I don't have to figure that out, I go back to what I said initially, which is I want to look at this as if the applicant is coming to us and proposing this entire package as being different from that and having to justify it to us just like all others. And that may mean that the hot tub is a great addition because the kids get use out of it, the deck is great and all that. And that way I avoid having to try to, and I can't decide who was at fault. I have my own view on who was at fault. So, and I think you're gonna have to do that anyway for the zoning board. So I'd rather see that presentation made again. And I'll have to, and then in between, I can think more about some of the legal ramifications of what David has raised. And so I'd rather, put this on have them come back and put this on our agenda next month. Hopefully Lori will be here. I think an issue like this deserves more than 3 people in any.
And it doesn't hurt their getting to the zoning board.
It doesn't hurt.
Because
I missed it.
I missed the deadline to do the summer notice.
I'd like Lori's perspective.
So that I'm clear, we would still be able to potentially get them on the September zoning board agenda?
Yeah, because of that extra month, you'd be able to come back. You won't impact that.
We're going to be able to file a zoning board application till after you let us do that. That's not going to happen until September. I'm not looking at a calendar, 3rd, 4th. Will we be able to meet this?
It's usually the week, the deadline is usually the week, the Monday after the meeting.
Okay, got it. That's great. We're happy to do if that makes the board more comfortable. I would much prefer, and I didn't say this, I would much prefer going to the zoning board with support from your board. I agree with Mary Ann. I know that they may ask that question. I would like to be able to go with some degree of support from your board, even if it's less than 100% endorsement.
There. Did you want to say?
I want, Mike, I thought you were also gonna poll the board about whether they see the 2 issues separately.
Yeah, Dan Mike isn't even ready to consider that
Okay.
yet. Is that correct, guys?
Okay,
Would you agree?
Correct. I would agree, yeah.
Mike, just to be clear, what is it you want? Obviously, you want Lori here, you want to think about it again. Is there an ask for the applicants that you're would like, or you just want the story again?
Well, I think they understand that if they're making the application and there's an opportunity to reduce coverage, they have that opportunity to do that on the next go round.
Okay.
If they choose not to, then I understand that they won't. There is that opportunity.
Appreciate the comment.
Yeah, so I think if your preference is to go to the ZBA with our support, then it definitely makes sense to come back again.
That'd be great. Is there anything more that you would like us to submit? I understand that Mr. Smith has been fairly clear that he wants to maybe more of an explanation as to why the Harrisons would like to keep the and the way Mike would analyze it, why they should be allowed to have in the first instance the hot tub in the back and the decking around it, as well as the patio in the back. So I think Steve's spoken to that, but we can address that again. But comparing I don't have my dates there, the 06 to the 21, we can come back at the next meeting and focus on those additional improvements. Is there anything else that the board specifically wants? Because to me, I think you almost answered it for yourself. It's the girls will love it, the family will enjoy it. So to me, it really comes down to, are there adverse impacts? And Cyrus has spoken to the engineering and the drainage, and we can come back and do that again. I don't want to have a cliffhanger where the next episode ain't so great. I'm not sure what more you're going to hear from us. We're happy to do it again. I'm happy to do it for Lori for sure. But unless you tell us that there's something specific you're looking for from them, I'm not sure what else you're going to get, other than we really would like to keep the hot tub, keep the deck, keep the patio, and Cyrus thinks we're not going to have an adverse impact on drainage.
I forget, what, Cyrus, is there in the package photographs of the existing deck and hot tub?
So I'd like to add to this comment. I think without having them design it right now, I think if you can get David, you can get Cyrus to give us a memo saying achievable are our pool code, achievable is the drainage, and achievable is the pool safety. I think that would be enough. I don't want them spending money designing it now, but if Cyrus can look at those 3 items and bring it back to them if it's achievable.
That's a great suggestion. Cyrus, you heard that? You were able to hear that?
Yeah, I believe the pool safety is already in place. It's fully fenced in, and there's the locks.
We're gonna have to focus on the pool code and the fencing under the pool code is what I'm assuming.
It's a little different than most.
Yeah. There's some interesting fencing issues that we got to make sure are examined.
Make sure it's achievable.
No problem.
You began to show the photograph.
Oh, so this was from the MLS report. Let me get another picture of what is actually. This is the current state. So
That's
it was, this area was all
Hang on, let me ask you,
bamboo.
Cyrus, let me ask you, Cyrus, hang on.
I'm looking for the decking and the hot tub.
Yeah. Go back to the other one, please. So, and so you all heard that this is from the MLS report that the Harrisons saw before visiting the property.
So Ed, you were talking about pool.
The spa counts as a pool in our code.
No, I know.
As you know from.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
So this doesn't necessarily meet pool requirement. Like we've had people who come and want to build pools.
Right.
And right now, we haven't discussed whether any of this complies with a.
And that's why I asked for them to look at and tell us it's achievable. I don't want them designing it if they're going to get denied. So if Cyrus can look at it, and I'll sit down with them a little bit, make sure we're on the same page. I don't want, $5,000 to $7,000 worth of design work done for maybe.
So that's assuming that in order for it to comply
It
with
needs
schools.
improvements.
that
It
won't-
needs more
it won't
drainage,
increase.
it needs better safety, and it needs, I think, well. It had a lot of screening, that's probably the answer why no one saw it.
Probably,
Bamboo.
yeah.
Well, it's all the bamboo. I thought
The
all the
bamboo's all
bamboo
gone.
was
Yeah,
gone.
yeah, so we have to make sure it meets the screening code.
Right. It's gone. You don't even know whether it was disposed of in accordance with.
Well, it's not poking through the sod, so it must be fine. So anyway, I think it'd be a good idea to get that done, because otherwise you might
We're
realize.
wasting time.
Yeah, well, no, it's also, it might come up later.
I think we can close out. Just to answer your question, what would have a positive impact would probably doesn't need to be said, would be reducing coverage, right? That's a lot of coverage. There's a huge deck already. That's what's probably in our minds right now. It's
Shit
the
the
biggest
canvas.
problem.
Now I know. How much of the over coverage?
Yes,
Or how much of the coverage is the deck and the hot tub? And how much is the
patio.
patio?
It's a great question. Cyrus, are you able to do that on the fly? Do you know of the 40-ish, 30 to 40% of of overage? How much of it is attributable to the hot tub area? How much of it is attributable to the patio area pre-extension?
Previously deck was 603. 50 minus 831. So this hot tub pool deck is 228 square feet.
It looks like it's 1/3 for the, I mean, I'm just eyeballing. It looks like 1/3 for the deck and 2/3 for the patio. Is that, Michael? I'm just eyeballing it.
Okay.
Cyrus, am I eyeballing it somewhat accurately? About 1/3 of that 30%, about 10% is pool deck and,
27%, you're pretty good.
yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. I did this once before.
Marianne?
Yeah, David, I think one thing should be clarified. You said you're gonna come back and show why the patio was necessary, whatever. I think you should distinguish between the existing patio and the expanded patio.
Sure.
The
Got it.
expansion,
Yeah.
I think the two should be distinguished. I think I was hearing that from the board.
That's fine. I'm laughing because the distinction is probably two chairs, but we will do that.
I think that we find the distinction.
It's two chairs,
significant
but it's
because it could be split.
207
I
square
know,
feet.
I understand that. We've told you that. Yep. It may be even, yeah, it's probably more than two chairs.
I'll go back to the public before we conclude, since it's been a while since the last check. Anybody from the public? No?
No.
Anything else in the room? Or do you have any other questions? for
No,
us to
we
be-
appreciate the time and the patience in hearing us out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And this was a lot better in person. We've never done this.
Definitely appreciate it.
I mean, friend of the board. I'm all throughout the county. You're the only ones, and I love it as the applicant when you say to me, I can stay home and wear a nice shirt and tie and I can wear sweats and Ed won't know. But I gotta tell you that the applicant, I understand the public being on Zoom, but for the applicant, as an applicant advocate and as a professional that's been in this village and in this room for over 30 years, being here live with you is the way that this ought to be done. So I very much appreciate you letting me come. I do this enough to know I needed to be here. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll Brad, I'll give you late tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow, he's gonna pay the price. You're even talking, Sarah, good to see all three of you.
So.
Right.
Actually.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, just.
we're gonna take a couple of minutes break. One of our board members is doing some electronics. Oh, we got an extra from Lori. Oh, okay. Oh,
You guys, no.
no, good.
Looking for the water cooler.
Marianne, you know.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, we had a resupply. Gunga Din had to bring some water in. It's an old movie. Probably nobody's ever heard of it, but I did. Yes, that was 5. All right, we're going to number 6, 2020-24, 34 Lewis Road Park.
If you're here to represent the application, please hit the raise hand button.
Mute. I am unmuted, I believe, and I'm starting video. So I'm moving ahead. And I'm going to try and share my screen if I can find out where this thing is. Here. Okay, so share screen. And do you see anything on the screen? Doesn't look like it.
We see something that's not the, it's a photograph.
Yes, so now if I go to slideshow and from the beginning, how about now?
Very good. We see a picture of the house.
Perfect. We're in the right place. Thank you. So what we are,
Yeah, Patty, before you start, this has nothing to do with what before the board, but it has something to do with the house. I was walking down there the other day and there was a drainage problem and I understand you did something about it. I hope it was runoff from the property running onto the village property and into the pond. It was a gully for drainage coming off, it appeared to be coming off the property. That was more than when the well was being dug.
On the south end.
yeah, I didn't see it, but I did talk with Sam, who's the contractor, about it. He has put up additional silt fence. I think perhaps has solved it, but there is a gully that runs along the south end of the property that comes down from the wetland, traverses another piece of property, then comes onto this property and runs out. So one of the things we should make sure is that somehow they're not mistaken for one another and they're not commingling. And we can go up tomorrow and take a look at that and make sure that everything that's disrupted on the site is properly protected.
I'm glad you put additional silt fence in. I thank you for that. I walk up there quite often and this is the first time I saw the erosion on the village property. So if it's the first time I've seen it, I don't see how the other water from the other property suddenly appeared over the last.
That's why I want to go up and take another look at it tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much. Now go ahead with the current presentation.
Okay, so what I'm showing now was the original approved site plan. I'm not going to spend any time going through it. Here was the site plan that we showed you at the June 7th meeting, showing the wall and the telephone pole and the fence. We submitted this drawing, which I think made it clear about which fence was in which location and how it worked. In the process of doing that, we made a very pretty green line where the wall is coming straight through here, just so perfectly straight. It's perfect. Misses all the trees except one. So and that is a 32-inch tree that's in very good condition. Certainly, as my notes showed on the drawings, certainly not our intent to remove. So I'm going to show you a concept just to see if it's the right approach that you think would make sense to solve that. But I think we can be pretty quick with this. These were the information we got from the engineers and from Susan Nolan. All of them I think are addressable. The main one from Han Engineering is the fact that we are over in coverage for the retaining wall. The fence doesn't count against us, but the retaining wall does. So we understand we're going to have to go to the zoning board on this for a variance for the coverage. The most significant point that Susan Nolan made was that we have the conflict with the 32-inch tulip tree. Our goal is to address that in a way that satisfies her, as well as her points 2 and 3 with the other landscaping issues. One comment that I don't know that she really made was one that I also think we need to address, and maybe it's what she's referring to in point 2. We have a planting plan. I have not asked the landscape architect yet to make the adjustments for the wall, because if the wall changes, I don't want her doing it more than once. So we can talk about that a little bit. Here is the coverage that we submitted to you for this month, showing what those coverages are. And this is showing that we're over by 632 square feet. We were originally approved for 6,208. We're permitted 6,365 by code, and we're proposing a total of 6,997, which is a 632 overage. The only reason we're over is because of the stone wall that's at the base of the fence, which I'm not going to claim that anybody agrees with me on anything, but my opinion is that given the circumstances with the path to Halsey Pond, the concerns that Caesar just mentioned a few minutes ago, having a clear barrier between what's happening on this site and what's happening adjacent to the site, I think is a benefit on the downslope side. So I'm looking at this retaining wall as something that benefits everyone, not just the residents. But that's obviously something that, we need the variance. And if there are other concerns that you have, what we need to do to deal with those. So here's a changed plan, from basically yesterday. One of the things, what we did here is we actually did two things. I'll go to this where it's a little bit bigger. On the very south end, we originally showed that wall coming all the way over to where the other fence goes up the hill, and that interferes with this swale. So what we've done is we've pulled that back so that we're not intruding on that swale. We may need, that's one of the reasons I want to go there and take a look tomorrow, because if there's water coming down here, we want to make sure that we're controlling that properly and it's not, causing erosion and then siltation into the pond. The other thing that we showed on this wall was the possibility, or on this drawing, is the possibility of sliding a portion of the wall back about maybe 10 feet from the tulip tray, so that what we would actually provide, because, it's nice to walk to the pond. So this would be kind of like an interesting little feature with a gate on both sides. She'd actually come towards the tulip tree, come through the fence, and then walk out on the trail. It could have a lock on it if they wanted one, but I think that would be a way to make a feature out of this that would be enjoyable and certainly obviates damage to the tulip tree. When I discussed this yesterday with members of the building department, I did point out that as good as our survey is, they're drawing a tree, and this could be 2 foot one way, 2 foot the other way. So one of the things I want to do, I didn't get the chance to do it today. We're going to pull a string down here and really, confirm where we are close. We might be close, like this other tree, this 26-inch tree. So we may need to do some adjustments on that. There are ways of bridging the roots. And when we were dealing with 2 Heritage Hill, the Binns residents, one of the issues there was we were going to be trenching adjacent to some significant trees. And what we agreed to do at that point was use an air spade. So we didn't have heavy equipment carrying up roots. If we encountered roots, we'd either bridge them or, treat them carefully. So I think we would want to add that the same conditions to everything that's happening along this. We have the details for the fence. It's a simple fence. These are just photographs of the house in its current state. This bottom photograph in the middle, that tall tree is the tree that we're talking about. Actually, let me go back again. The solarium room here, her office, that's that tree right out, she's looking out at that tree. So this is something that we appreciate the character that tree provides, and obviously want to make sure that it's not injured by what we're doing. These are just some, 3 different views of the same tree. The one on the right, I'm actually standing all the way at the back corner, that south corner, and I'm looking up this way. So we're pretty good with most of the trees, not having anything that's tight to this, but again, pulling that string and, measuring what the distance is from the string to trees is something that we will do and provide that information. Here's another issue that we're dealing with at this point, although I'm hoping we can get past it. This is the photograph of the telephone pole with the electric meter on it. We have proposed 4 American hollies, going in at around 6 feet, maybe a little bit taller at the time of planting. They would be positioned far enough off the meter box that we're not restricting access to it. We have a code we have to meet on that to make sure they've got adequate space to work on it. But the driveway, the future driveway actually doesn't come down and kind of bend this way towards that pole. It's actually going to come down and come across here. That's what's shown on our drawing. So we have room here to, to have some substantial, planting so that no one's really having to look at this big gray box. Another question that came up is the comment that was in the, I think the conservation easement, referring to, fences that are generic to the area, which there are a lot of really beautiful walls with fences on top in Irvington. So we just photographed some of them. So just to make sure, that it's clear what we're talking about. And I think that's, here's the landscaping plan, which if we're in the right place right now, if you guys feel we're headed in the right direction, what I want to do is have Suzanne Gentile, who is the landscape architect for this project, have her rethink what she's doing along this. And that's actually a question I have. At one point, there was a comment that we shouldn't be putting trees out in this area here. We should be keeping that clear for the path and pulling the trees primarily back behind the fence, maybe a couple for just so that it looks pretty, but primarily planting grasses on the pathway side. And I just wanted to confirm that that is what we should be, the instruction we should be giving to Susan.
Caesar, can I make?
Yeah, did you talk to Susan Nolan about that?
So my suggestion, Caesar, is to put the string up and have Susan Nolan and Susan Gentile meet out there and come to the conclusion.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And because Susan was concerned, and I think you mentioned her concern already, even though you might not have known it was her concern because you didn't seem to interpret her comments. The landscaping plan obviously has to change. And if the wall, once the location of the wall is settled, you need to adjust the existing landscaping plan to avoid the wall.
Yep. Am I accurate in that the concept should be primarily having large plantings on the owner's side of the wall and grasses and maybe some small plantings on the pathway?
I'm going to leave that to the landscape architects. Yours. And unless somebody would, we'll cover that when we have comments. Just to understand, if I'm correct, the stone wall, the stone part of the fence is 2 feet, and there's a wrought iron looking. It may not be wrought iron, maybe aluminum. Is 4 feet. Is that correct?
That's correct. And then what happens is like when we come off the end, Then we're going to a 6-foot metal fence. So the goal is to have the 4-foot top line up with the 6-foot top. So it creates a consistent line, and it's just the difference of the wall itself.
Sticking to the wall and the variance that's needed. Traditionally, when a new house is being built, every effort is made by this board, at least from my point of view, personal point of view. And one of the previous members, George Boyle, was that everything meets code. However, we're putting a wall and a fence on top of it. So one has to weigh the difference between, if there was just a fence, there would be no need for a variance.
Correct.
But if you put a wall, which in my opinion is more aesthetic, that you need a variance. So I think weighing the difference, I'd rather look at the stone and the fence as opposed to just the fence. And from my perspective, and I'll ask the rest of the board, that variance is more favorable than just having a fence. It's more favorable with the wall, and go with the variance. I think it's justified in my personal opinion.
Well, I certainly agree, but I don't get a vote.
Just hold on, let's ask the board.
Yeah.
Caesar, I'm in favor of what you said, the stone and a fence rather than just a fence.
Even though there's a variance.
Correct.
Mike Smith.
I agree.
Mike DeFuco.
I also agree.
All right, the other thing, I don't know about the straight line. You said a perfectly straight line. I don't know if you, when you come off the 287 and you come off at Bloomingdale Road and you look at the Westchester, there's a slight, the building is not a perfect rectangle. There's a slight curve to it, which I find rather pleasing.
Yeah.
I don't, that's my personal opinion. As opposed to a straight wall for the Westchester. It's just a little bit of an architectural feature that I tend to appreciate every time I come to that stoplight. So with that said,
yeah,
and maybe you can avoid some of the trees by putting a slight curve or whatever.
Yeah, with the metal fence, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to be the one that has to go and bend it. So what I would do is talk with the contractor, make sure he doesn't have a problem with that. But obviously, a metal fence that's following a curve is more complicated than a straight one. But I think if the curve component of it is challenging, I think the idea of having little events, particularly when they're connected to the presence of a tree, I think that's something that can, be a positive feature, and we can take a look at maybe using that to both break up the long length and to make sure that we're not intruding upon trees that we care about.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. I'm not strong on it. I just was something I mentioned. If it's and you're right. If you're putting evergreens in, which there are already there, and I'm not sure if this wall will affect the trees that you already planted, the evergreens, some form of evergreen, pine or whatever they are.
Yeah.
And when they grow, they're going to grow through the fence year round. So that's another dampening effect of the visual. Okay. Now, what was the other thing? Planting. You got to talk about revising the planting plan around the wall. Where that's going to be.
Well, yeah, I think the suggestion that Ed made is a perfect one. I pull the string. I have both landscape architects there, and they both tell me what to write down. I listen to them and I follow Susan and Suzanne's expertise.
Okay. Now, in addition, any comment, Dan, on the planting that we talked about? Are we okay with the planting around the electrical box?
Oh, yes.
And anything else with this?
Well, yeah, apparently the road will move away from the box as well. So that's a good.
That's a good planting. I wrote that question down. The road, moving the road away from the box to allow for a separation between the plants and the box.
Exactly.
Is that part of the original approval, or do we need to reapprove?
No, actually, if I get back to that plan, right now, this road, the driveway comes out over here, almost over where the property line is. So right now, that pile of, where the pole is,
you mean physically where it is, not necessarily where it's going to be.
Right, we're positioning the road further away from that pole to give us plenty of room for planting. We're shifting that. That's what's always been on our plan.
My question is the shifting of the road from where it is now to over, is it something we already approved?
Yes.
Absolutely. Start on
Okay.
plan now.
Yeah.
Smith.
If I go back up to, here's,
Patty, hold on, please.
Yep.
Thank you, Fuco.
No other questions.
Anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, you have anything to add, Patty?
nope, I have clear instructions. I understand we can't be on the ZBA this month. We're gonna be coming back to you before we go to the ZBA, but that's what we're gonna do.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you very much. And I think the most critical part of, from our point of view, is the planting plan.
Yep.
So it's critical that you get together with the Susans and come up with the modified plan and since we had graphics of the past planting plan, we'll say that past planting plan. If you could show us a revised graphic of what that's going to look like.
Sure. I don't know that I can do as nice a job as Chris Broda did. I got to find the program he had. That's a killer program. It's really good looking. But we'll do that.
I was about to mention that, but your other program wasn't that bad. It was pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Okay, so please make that graphic for us of the new planting plan that our Suzanne can agree with, and see where we go. And then after our next meeting, you'll sign up for the ZBA for the variance.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
And you heard the board. I told the board. I don't know with Lori. She's not here. But the aesthetic difference between the fence and the stone, we think is worth the variance. I don't know what the ZBA will think, but it certainly would something that we think is okay.
Excellent.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the last one is 2023-22, 123 Main Street.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we don't see any site plan or.
You don't see,
We don't see you either.
you don't see me either, huh? Okay.
We can see your name.
Oh, that's good. It's a start. There I am.
Now we.
I didn't want to scare you.
Well, you've been waiting through the previous presentations.
Okay, I just need to get to share the screen. There it is. This one. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. My name is Mark Fritz. I'm the architect who worked for Lauren. And essentially, she lives in a historic district of town, Main Street and North Dearman Street. It's a 50 by 75 lot, existing house and storefront, basically all existing. Also existing on the property is a driveway and a patio. The the main purpose of my involvement in the project was dealing more with the containment of water, which essentially is contained in the basement, and mitigating that to get it removed. As you can see, the items essentially is repaving of the existing driveway. The existing patio, she apparently remediated it. Either portions are being repaired or replaced just because they've degraded over time. In terms of setbacks, we're essentially zero setback on the property. The building essentially is 8.5 feet more or less off of Dearman. And we basically have the fence also going in between the driveway and the patio. She's putting on a fence with a gate in that location. So essentially it's a fence, that patio that's there, and the driveway are the main things that she's dealing with on the site. Questions?
Yeah, Mary Ann, did we say this is a contributing building in the historic district?
It is contributing, but none of the work they're doing would fit into the definition of demolition because none of the work is facing a street, a public way.
What about some of the fixing up everything?
No, it only has to go to the ARB on that initial thing, is if it's quote a demolition, and demolition is.
This is more than repair and
Yeah, no, but the definition is that even if it's a repair and it's the front of a house, if it's the part facing the street, then it would fit in that definition, but this does not fit within that definition. So they don't have to make that preliminary showing to the ARB.
okay, but eventually do they have to go there?
Yes.
Yeah, like all applications.
Okay, there's some serious drainage issues which you can talk to Doug. Doug, if you want to comment on it, or if you already spoke to him about it. He seems to realize he has a drainage problem.
Well, really, I mean, we'd like to see some topo on there to see where any overflow would go. The patio is undocumented, so it has to be treated as if it's new. And nothing is currently connected to the infiltrators that you're proposing except the sump pump, correct?
Yeah, it's basically for basement drainage. That's what we were hired to do.
Okay. All right. Well, if you have any questions on the review, you can call me to go over.
All right, appreciate it, Doug.
Ed, do they need to do the coverage? There's some coverage issues that they need to clean up. It's a moot point, but they should get it right.
We should get them right, but yeah, they're allowed unlimited coverage unless the board decides otherwise.
Yeah. All right. Did you hear that? Your coverage numbers need to be cleaned up.
Okay, we'll take a look at that.
And without beating it to death, they'll call them and they'll explain why it needs to be cleaned up.
Well, that's not a problem.
Okay.
Sure.
Drainage fence. Okay. Dan, you have anything?
No questions.
Mike Smith,
No questions?
Mike DeFuco,
Nothing for me.
anything in the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, clean up the coverage and talk to Doug about the drainage.
Thank you very much.
That seems to be what you're here for, to fix the drainage. If it's in the basement, you wouldn't own it there. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience for waiting 2 hours to get on.
Not a problem. Have a good evening.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
We're done. Okay, any other comments on general comments? Anybody?
Nope.
All right, we're all done. The meeting of August 2nd of the planning board is closed.